second matter which we have selected is in the names of Deputies Jennifer Carroll McNeill and Deputy Neale Richmond, and they wish to discuss exceptional needs payments for families with additional rental bills due to shutdown of home renovations. And it's Minister Joe O'Brien is here to deal with this. Deputy Carroll McNeill.
Thank you, Can Corla. And to appreciate the net issue around construction is, of course, an issue for the Minister for Housing. But this is actually about the financial impact of the shutdown of the construction sector. There are a number of families who have been engaging in home renovation projects and who have are renting other accommodation for the period of the renovation. And because of the unforeseen additional shutdown and the shutdown to the construction sector for private accommodation, they are facing very considerable additional rental bills. Now, some of those families can absorb that cost, it's true, but many of them are really under severe financial pressure in affording that additional cost for maybe 3, 4, 5 or even 6 months. And of course they have to plan that 2 months in advance to be able to give notice to their short-term landlord and so on. So what I want to do this evening, Minister, is just flag this as a significant cost burden to those families that they are simply not able to bear in some cases, and to make sure that the department can make additional needs payments, whether it's under supplementary welfare, whether it's exceptional needs, but just to make sure that if these families approach the department or approach the Intrio offices, that the department is aware of these particular cases, aware of the burden that these families who may not otherwise have presented to the department or presented to Intrio in other cases, but are under particular pressure now. We know that renovations and private home constructions can't progress at the moment. People understand that, though they do look with frustration at the construction activity that has been going on in respect of housing adaptation and social houses, as important as they are. If when it's your house that's being renovated and perhaps subject to the vagaries of the wind, the rain, not being able to complete things and facing the additional burden, it's very difficult. In my own constituency, for example, there's a couple who recently purchased a private home in a new development. The home was in the final snagging stage but couldn't meet the January 31 deadline. All of things going to plan, they would have moved in last month. They've been saving for a really long time and just cannot afford the additional rental burden. So thank you for just hearing us on this evening, Minister.
Thank you, Deputy. Deputy Richmond.
Aguramaga, Can Corla, and I'm very grateful to my colleague Dr. Carroll McNeill for allowing me to come in on this very important topical issue. Minister Can Corla, we all know that throughout this pandemic there are sadly people who slip through the gaps in terms of the supports that are available from the government, and we've discussed them at length when it comes to CRIS and the workplace supports that are there for many employers and for many businesses. But I think one area which is a certain group that's really getting caught in it, as Deputy Carroll McNeill has alluded to, it's people who have been undergoing work on their homes, and a lot of the work that was due to be completed or wasn't counted as essential has left them in a situation where they're having to rent. They're having to meet the cost of both rent as well as a mortgage, or indeed they're having to rely on borrowings and savings and facing a very difficult situation. And we all know the difficulties of the rental market, the uncertainties, and we don't know exactly when these works can continue. I think I'm struck, Minister, by 2 cases in my own constituency. Firstly, a family who contacted me all the way back in January who were having pyrite remediation works carried on their home. Their home has been stripped down the foundations. It's completely inhabitable. The works haven't continued. They're having to rent. They don't have family they could live with, and now they're in a situation where the landlord is going, well, how much longer do you want? How are we going to be able to avoid both this rent and the mortgage? A second situation, a family in Slorgan who have taken off essentially the back of their house to adapt their home and indeed construct a wet room for a child who has severe special needs. They're living in temporary rental accommodation. Their lease is up. The costs are mounting. The builders cannot do this work, and they're starting to really worry, how are they going to make ends meet? How are they going to make those rent payments? How are they going to meet their mortgage? How are they going to pay off this work that isn't being done, that they need so importantly to be done? This isn't necessarily a case of people who are making a choice or luxury or going for a luxury item. These are vital works, needed works, and it has the quantity where people are falling through the caps and facing double payments in a very difficult situation, and they absolutely need an emergency payment of some kind. Guramaga, Can Corla.
Deputies, and thank you for raising these real human dilemmas for people. Minister.
Thanks, Deputies, for raising this issue. I'll give some context first. On 6 January, the Government announced that additional public health restrictions would apply under Level 5 of the Plan for Living with COVID-19. The additional restrictions required all construction activity to cease from 6 p.m. on Friday, the 8th of January, with a number of exceptions. These measures are set out in the Health Act 1947, COVID-19, Regulations 2020 as amended. With regard to private housing development, the regulations provide that housing and construction works ongoing on the 8th of January could continue where the works required to render the property capable of occupation were scheduled for completion by the 31st of January 2021. The regulations also provide for the supply and delivery of essential or emergency maintenance and repair services to businesses and homes, including electrical, gas, oil, plumbing, glazing and roofing services on an emergency call-out basis. On the 23rd of February, the Government announced that the current Level 5 restrictions will remain in place until the 5th of April 2021. People who cannot occupy their new or renovated home can apply for mortgage payment breaks. Banks have been asked and generally are exercising forbearance with regard to mortgage and loan repayments. In September, the Central Bank reported over 90,000 people availing of mortgage payment breaks, and that the overall number of people in arrears has reduced. Banks are obliged to follow the Central Bank's Code of Conduct on Mortgage Arrears, which involves a four-step mortgage arrears resolution process, or MARP. Accordingly, in most situations, a person who does not have the financial wherewithal should not be faced with the challenge of covering both rent and mortgage or loan repayments while they await the completion of a new home build or renovation. In addition, people can access the Money Advice and Budgetary Service, which is funded by the Department of Social Protection under the aegis of the Citizens Information Board, for support in utilising the mortgage arrears resolution process. Protections are also in place to support tenants during a lockdown. A moratorium on evictions taking place is currently in operation throughout the country from the 31st of December 2020 to the 15th of April this year, with limited exceptions. The Department of Social Protection does provide a range of supports to help people during COVID-19, most notably the Pandemic Unemployment Payment, the EWSS, COVID-19 Illness Benefit, and have introduced flexibility with regards to access to rent supplement. In addition, we provide supplementary supports in cases where a person is experiencing financial hardship. These are, of course, subject to a means test in order to ensure that supports are targeted to those who need them most. For example, the Exceptional Needs Payment Scheme is available to provide supports to people who may be experiencing exceptional needs as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. Payments are made at the discretion of the officers administering the scheme, taking into account the requirements of the legislation and all of the relevant circumstances of the case. In considering whether to make a payment, officers consider the income of the household and the ability of the applicant to meet the need from their own resources. Exceptional needs payments are not subject to the habitual residence condition, and payments can be made to people who do not qualify for other social welfare supports. Accordingly, any person experiencing financial hardship as a consequence of COVID-19 related constraints can and should access the Community Welfare Service, and where they can establish a need, we are there to help. I'd like to thank you, Deputies, for raising this matter.
Thank you very much, Minister. Deputy Carol McNeill. Yeah.
Thank you, Minister, for your response, which is very welcome. I'll be sure to bring that back to the constituents who are suffering in this way. It's an unexpected burden that they faced, and they're not, a lot of them have not had contact with Intrio services before and just may not be aware of the supports offered by the government in different stages. So thank you for this, and I will, of course, refer to the Minister's speech when advising them to refer to it as well when they make contact with Intrio offices. These are, as the Ceann Comhairle said, the very human dilemmas, the very human cases that come out of the COVID experience that people you just don't expect when you're making the sort of changes that have had to be made for public health guidance. Of course, I would encourage the Minister for Housing to ensure that this type of construction is among the first, if not the first, that's reopened when that is possible to be done. And we recognise the reason why it has had to be closed, but as you say, the human impact is quite considerable, and the stress and strain on families on not knowing whether they need to get an extra month, an extra 2 or 3 months, it is quite a burden when it's about family accommodation. Thank you.
Deputy Richmond.
I think I do welcome a lot of your comments, Minister, and I think it's about the practicalities. And this is where we're dealing with a situation where individuals who, as I said, are going under absolutely vital works, unfortunately not classified as essential work, often dealing with family situations that most of us in this House simply deal with as representations every day, but we don't experience on a personal level. And they don't have the time to go through a labyrinth of forms and various different schemes. But equally, I'm a bit concerned when you refer to means testing. To what extent will means test take into account things like a mortgage as well as additional rent? And I think certainly there is a scope here for expanding the rent supplement thing, and I'd ask you, Minister, to work with Minister Heather Humphreys to look at those expansions, because hopefully this is a very short-term measure, Count Corla. It's a short-term measure for you and I on the grander scheme, but for the families who are locked out of their family homes, doing vital works and not knowing how they're going to pay their bills at the end of the month, it's very present and it's very, very concerning.
Thank you, Deputy Minister, to conclude.
Thank you. The Exceptional Needs Payment Scheme is available to provide support to people who may be experiencing exceptional needs as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. I appreciate that current restrictions on construction have had a significant unforeseen impact on households who began renovations on family homes prior to the current Level 5 restrictions being introduced, and particularly on those who have had to vacate their homes to seek alternative accommodation once renovations started. Those affected can access the Money Advice and Budgetary Service, which is funded by the Department of Social Protection, for support in utilising the mortgage arrears resolution process. It is unlikely that financial support from the Department of Social Protection will be available in all cases where additional unforeseen rental costs associated with the ongoing shutdown of construction, which has stopped renovation work on family homes being completed. The Department may be able to assist some low-income or welfare-dependent households affected in meeting these costs through the Exceptional Needs Payment Scheme. Any person experiencing financial hardship as a consequence of COVID-19 related constraints can and should access the Community Welfare Service, and where they can establish a need, we are there to help. I would say as well that in terms of red tape and form filling, the exceptional needs payment cuts through a lot of that, and it's a relatively easy payment to apply for, as it is generally accepted that it's needed quickly. So